The council chamber stretched wider than any building on Earth. Crystal walls curved upward into darkness, and thousands of seats floated in the air, arranged in circles that went up and up until they disappeared. Each seat held a different kind of creature. Some had fur, some had scales, others glowed with their own light. A few didn't even have bodies that made sense to human eyes. Ambassador Elena Kovac sat in a small chair at the center of it all. She felt like an ant at the bottom of a bowl. 3 other humans sat with her, members of her diplomatic team, but they might as well have been invisible. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness in the room focused on them with an attention that felt heavy. The High Arbiter spoke first. The Kelnari were an old race, so old that nobody knew exactly when they had first reached the stars. The Arbiter looked like a tall mantis made of silver metal, though Kovac knew it wasn't really metal at all. Its voice came through her translator earpiece, flat and without emotion. The species called humans requests entry to the Galactic Council, the Arbiter said. They have presented their credentials. The floor is open for discussion. Kovac had expected questions. She had prepared answers about Earth's technology, their culture, their plans for peaceful cooperation. Instead, what came next was laughter. It started with the Zachary representative, a creature that looked like a combination of a beetle and a spider, its purple carapace gleaming under the chamber lights. When it laughed, the sound came out as clicking and chittering that the translator turned into harsh, barking sounds. Humans, the Zachary said, and somehow the translator carried the contempt in that one word. A species that has barely left its own star system. A species that learned to split the atom and immediately used it to kill their own kind. And they want to sit among us? More laughter rippled through the chamber. Kovac felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her face neutral. This was politics, this was the game, she could handle it. They called themselves civilized, another voice called out. This one belonged to a Velthram, a being of pure energy that looked like a floating collection of lights in a vaguely humanoid shape. Yet they still die. They still age and rot and return to dust. They are slaves to their biology. They fight wars over invisible lines on their planet, said a Talshek, a slug-like creature with too many eyes. They kill each other because someone was born on the wrong side of a border, because someone believes in a different invisible being in the sky. Kovac wanted to respond, to defend humanity, but the Arbiter had not given her permission to speak. She sat and listened as species after species took their turn mocking her people. I have reviewed their history, said an Orinthe, a species that looked like walking flowers with crystalline petals. They have been a technological species for less than 10,000 years. We have recorded history going back 4 million years. They are infants, babies playing with fire. Dangerous babies, the Zachary added. They nearly destroyed their own planet. They poisoned their air and water. They drove thousands of their own species to extinction. And now they want to come out, here and do the same to the galaxy? The worst part was that none of it was a lie. Kovac knew Earth's history. She had studied it her whole life. Humanity had done terrible things. They had made awful mistakes. But they had also learned. They had changed. Didn't that count for something? Look at them, said a small reptilian creature whose species name Kovac didn't recognize. So fragile. Their bodies break so easily. They need exactly the right temperature, the right air, the right pressure. Take them out of their perfect little bubble and they die in minutes. They are barely evolved apes, the Zachary said again, and this time the laughter was louder. Give them another 1,000,000 years and perhaps they will be worth talking to. Perhaps. Kovac glanced at her team. Dr. Chen, the xenobiologist, stared at the floor. Commander Park, the military liaison, had his hands clenched into fists. Ambassador Liu, the senior diplomat, just shook her head slightly. The message was clear. Stay quiet. Don't make it worse. But it kept getting worse. A Velthram drifted closer to the human delegation, its lights pulsing in patterns that might have been amusement. Tell me, little humans, what have you accomplished? What have you done that any of us should care about? Before Kovac could answer, the creature continued. We Velthram transcended physical form 6 million years ago. We exist as pure consciousness now. We do not age. We do not die. We do not fight over resources because we need no resources. What can you offer us? What can you teach us? Nothing, the Zachary answered for her. They can teach us nothing. They can offer us nothing. They are primitives banging rocks together and expecting us to be impressed. The Talshek representative undulated forward, its body leaving a trail of slime that evaporated in the air. My people have mastered gravity itself. We can move planets. We can create or collapse stars. Humans can barely control their own weather. Why should we let them join us? Perhaps as entertainment, suggested the Orinthi. Its voice sounded like wind chimes, pretty but cold. We could watch them stumble about, making mistakes, learning slowly what we learned eons ago. It might be amusing. Kovach felt anger rising in her chest, hot and fierce. She wanted to stand up and scream at them. She wanted to list all the things. Humanity had accomplished all the art and music and literature they had created, all the problems they had solved. But she knew it wouldn't matter. These beings had seen millions of civilizations rise and fall. They had forgotten more than humanity would ever know. The Arbiter raised one of its blade-like arms, and silence fell across the chamber. The Council has heard much discussion, it said. It is clear that humanity's application has raised concerns. That was putting it mildly, Kovach thought. However, the Council is not without mercy, the Arbiter continued. We recognize that all species must start somewhere. Even we were young. Once, though it was so long ago that the memory is like a dream. The Arbiter turned its triangular head toward Kovach. She couldn't read its expression if it even had expressions. We offer humanity a chance, the Arbiter said. A test. Prove to us that your species deserves a place here. Prove that you are more than primitive apes, more than violent children playing with weapons you do not understand. Kovach stood up slowly. What kind of test? Each species on this council has earned their place, the Arbiter explained. Each has demonstrated something unique, something valuable, something that sets them apart from the countless other civilizations that have come and gone. Tomorrow we will hear from our members. They will share their greatest achievements. And then, Ambassador Kovach, you will share yours. The Arbiter's next words felt like a door closing. You have 24 hours to prepare. Show us what makes humanity special. Show us why we should not simply send you back to your little planet and tell you to return in 1,000,000 years when you have grown up. The session ended. The floating seats began to drift away, carrying their occupants to other parts of the station. Kovach stood in the center of the chamber with her team, feeling smaller than ever. Well, Commander Park said quietly. That went great. Dr. Chen laughed, but it was a bitter sound. What are we supposed to say? What do we have that they don't? Ambassador Liu put a hand on Kovach's shoulder. You'll think of something, you have to. But as they walked back to their ship, Kovach wondered if that was true. What did humanity have? What could they possibly say to beings who had mastered death itself, who had existed for millions of years, who saw humans as nothing more than clever animals? She had 24 hours to find an answer. 24 hours to save humanity's place among the stars. It didn't seem like enough time. The council chamber felt different the next day. The mockery from before had been replaced by something colder. Curiosity, maybe, or perhaps just impatience. The aliens wanted their show, and then they wanted the humans gone. Kovach sat in the same seat as before. She had not slept. Her team had spent all night arguing about what to present, and they had gotten nowhere. How could they compete with species that had millions of years of advancement? Every idea seemed pathetic compared to what these beings had accomplished. The High Arbiter called the session to order. We begin the presentations, it announced. Each council member will share their greatest achievement. Then the humans will have their turn. The Arbiter gestured to the Zachary representative. The insect creature clicked forward on its many legs, its purple shell catching the light. The Zachary Empire has existed for 10,000 years without interruption, the representative announced, pride clear even through the translator. 10,000 years of perfect order, perfect peace, perfect unity. We achieved this through strength and wisdom. When our empire began, there were many hive clusters on our world. They fought each other for resources and territory. There was chaos. The Zachary paused, its mandibles clicking together. We ended the chaos. The strongest cluster conquered all others. We eliminated weakness. We removed disorder. Now there is only one hive, one purpose, one mind. We have not had a war in 9,000 years. Can the humans say the same? Can they claim even 1,000 years of peace? The chamber filled with sounds of approval. Kovac felt sick. The Zachary spoke of eliminating other hive clusters like it was a good thing. How many of their own people had they killed to achieve this perfect peace? Next came the Talshek. The massive slug creature oozed forward, leaving its trail that vanished into smoke. My people control gravity, the Talshek said simply. We can make it stronger or weaker. We can make things float or crush them into dust. We moved our entire planet to a better orbit around our sun. We created 3 new moons for our world by pulling asteroids from space. We have built structures that would collapse under their own weight on any normal world. But they stand because we control the very force that holds the universe together. The Talshek's many eyes focused on Kovac. Humans still use chemical rockets to escape their planet's gravity. They burn fuel and explode upward like children setting off fireworks. They have not even begun to understand the fundamental forces of reality. More approval from the council. Kovac made notes on her tablet, but her mind was elsewhere. These achievements were impressive, yes, but something about them felt hollow. She couldn't explain why. The Velthrum came next, their energy form pulsing with different colors. We transcended, the Velthrum said, and their voice carried a smugness that made Kovac's teeth clench. 6 million years ago, we were like the humans. We had bodies. We aged, we died. We were slaves to biology. But we learned. We discovered how to transfer our consciousness into pure energy. Now we do not age. We do not hunger. We do not tire. We are immortal. The lights of the Velthrum brightened. We left our physical forms behind. Those who could not or would not make the transition were left on our homeworld. They died out naturally. It was unfortunate but necessary. Evolution requires leaving the weak behind. Kovac wrote that down. Left behind, died out. The Velthrum had abandoned part of their own species to achieve immortality. How many had been left behind? Millions, billions. The Arinthi representative stood, its crystalline petals shifting through different colors. My people achieved something more precious than technology, it said. We achieved perfect harmony. There is no conflict among the Arinthi. There is no disagreement. No arguments. No wars. The flower-like creature swayed gently. We accomplished this through genetic engineering. We removed the genes that caused aggression. We removed the parts of our mind that wanted individual achievement. Now we think as one. We work as one. We exist in perfect peace because we removed the parts of ourselves that caused conflict. Kovac stared at the Arinthi. They had genetically engineered out individuality. They had removed free will, essentially, and called it an achievement. Species after species presented their accomplishments. The Methrin had created artificial intelligence so advanced that it ran their entire civilization. The Methrin themselves just lived lives of leisure while their machines did everything. The Korthi had conquered death through cloning, creating new bodies whenever their old ones wore out. The Zelf had merged with machines, becoming cyborgs that were more computer than organic. Each presentation was impressive. Each one showed mastery over some aspect of existence that humans couldn't even dream of achieving. But as Kovac listened, a pattern began to form in her mind. Every species had achieved their greatness by giving something up. The Zachary gave up diversity. The Velthrum gave up their bodies and abandoned those who couldn't transcend. The Arinthi gave up individuality. The Methrin gave up purpose. Finally, the presentations ended. The chamber fell silent. Every eye, sensor, and consciousness turned toward Kovac. The High Arbiter spoke. We have shared our achievements. Now, Ambassador Kovac, it is your turn. Tell us what makes humanity worthy of joining this council. Tell us what you have accomplished that we should admire. Kovac stood up. Her legs felt shaky, but she forced herself to walk to the center of the chamber. She had spent all night looking for an answer. She had reviewed Earth's history, its art, its science, its culture. She had looked for something unique, something that none of these ancient species could claim. And she had found it, but it was risky. It might backfire completely. These aliens might laugh at her even harder than before, but it was the only answer that felt true. I need to tell you a story first, Kovac began. A story about my species, about our history. She could feel the impatience in the room. They wanted achievements, not stories. But she continued anyway. 300 years ago, humans owned other humans as slaves. We bought and sold people like property. We forced them to work until they died. We separated families. We treated other humans as less than human because of the color of their skin. The chamber was silent, confused. 150 years ago, we invented nuclear weapons. We created bombs that could destroy entire cities in seconds. We built enough of these weapons to destroy our entire planet many times over. We pointed them at each other and came very close to using them. Kovac took a breath. 80 years ago, we committed genocide. We systematically murdered millions of our own people because of their religion and ethnicity. We built factories designed specifically for killing. We created an industry of death. The confusion in the chamber was growing. Why was the human talking about their failures? This was supposed to be about achievements. 50 years ago, we were destroying our planet. We poisoned our air and water. We cut down our forests. We drove species to extinction. We knew we were doing it and we didn't stop. Commander Park was staring at her like she had lost her mind. Dr. Chen looked horrified. Ambassador Liu's face was unreadable. Kovac looked up at the thousands of aliens watching her. You want to know what makes humanity special? You want to know our greatest achievement? She let the question hang in the air for a moment. We stopped. The confusion deepened. The Zachary representative clicked forward. What do you mean you stopped? We stopped owning slaves. We made it illegal. We fought a war against ourselves to end it. The slaves and former slaves fought alongside free people. Nobody forced us. No alien species came to Earth and made us stop. We decided it was wrong and we ended it. Kovac's voice grew stronger. We stopped using nuclear weapons. We didn't destroy ourselves. We looked at the edge of the cliff and stepped back. We created treaties. We reduced our weapons. We chose not to end the world. She started walking in a slow circle, making eye contact with as many aliens as she could. We stopped the genocide. We held trials. We created the concept of crimes against humanity. We judged ourselves. We said never again, and we meant it. The chamber was completely silent now, a different kind of silence than before. We stopped destroying our planet. It took time. It was hard. We're still working on it, but we changed. We created new technologies. We made new laws. We chose to save our world instead of consuming it. Kovac stopped walking and stood at the center of the chamber again. You asked what makes us special. Here is your answer. We did terrible things and then we decided to stop. Not because we were forced to. Not because we were defeated. But because we looked at what we were doing and decided it was wrong. The silence in the chamber stretched longer. Kovac could see the aliens processing what she had said. Some of them looked confused. Others looked skeptical. A few looked almost offended. The Zachary representative was the first to speak. You describe failures and call them achievements. You committed atrocities and then simply stopped committing them. This is not special. This is basic, is it? Kovac asked quietly. Tell me, when the Zachary Empire unified your world, what happened to the other hive clusters? The Zachary went still. They were eliminated. They were inferior, weak. They would have caused chaos. Did any of them surrender? Did any of them want to join you peacefully? The insect creature's mandibles clicked rapidly. Some did. But they would have polluted our perfect unity. We could not allow disorder. Kovac nodded slowly. So you eliminated them. You achieved peace by destroying everyone who was different from you. You never stopped. You never looked at what you were doing and questioned it. She turned to face the Velthrum. And you. You transcended to energy. You left behind everyone who couldn't make the change. Did any of them want to stay? Did any of them choose to remain physical? The lights of the Velthrum flickered. Some did. They were afraid. They lacked vision. We could not wait for them. Progress requires sacrifice. You left them to die, Kovac said. It wasn't a question. Your own people. You could have helped them. You could have found another way. But you didn't. You just left them behind and called it evolution. The Velthrum's lights turned an angry red. You dare judge us? You whose species still kills each other over resources and territory? Yes, we do, Kovac admitted. We still have wars. We still have crime. We still hurt each other. But here's the difference. We know it's wrong. We fight against it. We create laws and systems to stop it. We don't accept it as the cost of progress. We don't justify it by saying it was necessary. She looked at the Orinthi. You removed conflict by removing individuality. You engineered out the parts of yourself that disagreed. But did everyone agree to that? Did every member of your species want to give up their individual thoughts? The crystalline petals of the Orinthi shifted through several colors before settling on a dull gray. There was resistance. Some of our people wanted to remain as they were. They said individuality was precious. But they were wrong. They caused problems, conflicts. We could not achieve perfect harmony with them. So what did you do with them? The Orinthi was quiet for a long moment. They were not harmed. They were simply not allowed to reproduce. Within a few generations, all Orinthio had the new genetics. The individuals died out naturally. Kovac felt cold. You sterilized them. You decided that your way was the only way, and you made sure no other way could exist. She turned in a slow circle, looking at all the species in the chamber. Do you see the pattern? Every single one of you achieved your greatness by eliminating something. You eliminated diversity. You eliminated individuality. You eliminated the weak, the afraid, the different. You achieved perfection by destroying everything that wasn't perfect. The chamber erupted in sounds, angry clicking from the Zachary, aggressive light pulses from the Velthram. The Talshek made a sound like grinding stone, but Kovac raised her voice over all of them. Humanity is different. We did terrible things, yes, but we stopped ourselves. Nobody eliminated the slave owners. We didn't kill everyone who disagreed with ending slavery. We argued, we debated. We fought a war, yes, but after the war we didn't eliminate the losing side. We brought them back into our society. We changed minds. We changed laws. We changed culture. She pulled up her tablet and displayed images in the air above her, pictures from Earth's history. Look at this. This is a photograph from 100 years after we ended slavery. A black woman sitting at a lunch counter where she wasn't allowed to sit. She was arrested for it. But she didn't fight with weapons. She just sat there. She refused to accept injustice. Another image. This is a man standing in front of tanks. His government was killing protesters. He stood in front of the tanks and said no. He didn't have an army. He didn't have weapons. He just had conviction. More images float across the display. These are protesters marching for equality. These are scientists who warned about climate change when it was unpopular. These are people who stood up and said we can be better. And slowly, piece by piece, we listened. Kovac closed the display. This is what makes us special. We change ourselves from the inside. We don't remove the parts we don't like. We don't eliminate the people who disagree. We argue with them. We try to convince them. Sometimes it takes generations, but we change minds instead of removing them. The High Arbiter had been silent throughout all of this. Now it spoke. You claim moral superiority because you stopped doing evil things. But you should never have done them in the first place, so you're right, Kovac said immediately. We shouldn't have. But we did. We're not perfect. We're not claiming to be perfect. But we're the only species here that seems to understand that perfection isn't the goal. She let that sink in for a moment. Every species here has described achieving some form of perfection. Perfect peace. Perfect harmony. Perfect control. And you achieved it by cutting away everything that wasn't perfect. You made yourselves simple, uniform, clean. Kovac's voice grew passionate. But humanity? We're messy. We argue about everything. We have thousands of different cultures, languages, religions, philosophies. We disagree about fundamental questions of existence. And you know what? We've decided that's a strength, not a weakness. She pulled up another image. The United Nations building on Earth. This is where representatives from every nation on Earth meet. They argue. They debate. They disagree constantly. It's loud and messy and inefficient. But they keep talking. They keep trying to find common ground. Because we learned something important. Unity without diversity isn't unity. It's just conformity. The Zachary representative made an angry sound. You romanticize chaos. You celebrate disorder. This is weakness, not strength, is it? Kovac challenged. Tell me, what happens if your perfect hive encounters a problem you've never seen before? You all think the same way. You all approach problems the same way. If that way doesn't work, you're stuck. But humanity? We have millions of different perspectives. Millions of different approaches. When one way doesn't work, we try another, and another, and another. She looked at the Orinthi. You achieved perfect harmony by making everyone the same. But what happens when you need creativity? What happens when you need someone to think differently? You remove that capability. You traded potential for peace. The chamber was silent again, but this silence felt different, less mocking, more thoughtful. Some of the aliens were looking at each other. Some were looking at displays, probably reviewing their own histories. Kovac pressed her advantage. You asked what humanity can offer the Council. What we can teach you, here it is. We can teach you that progress doesn't require perfection. We can teach you that it's possible to improve while staying diverse. We can teach you that stopping evil is more impressive than never having the capacity for evil in the first place. She took a deep breath. You look at our violence and call us primitive. But we're violent because we have free will. We're violent because we have different ideas about what's right. And yes, sometimes that leads to conflict. Sometimes it leads to terrible things. But it also means we can change. It means we can grow. It means we're not static. Kovac looked directly at the High Arbiter. Every species in this council has stopped evolving. You've reached your final form. You've achieved your perfection. But humanity? We're still arguing about what we should be. And that's not a weakness. That's our greatest strength. The Arbiter's triangular head tilted slightly. You present an interesting argument, Ambassador. But words are easy. Prove what you say. Prove that your way is better than ours. Kovac smiled. It wasn't a happy smile. I already did. Look at this council. How many species have joined in the last 1,000,000 years? The Arbiter was silent. None. Kovac answered for it. Because you're all so perfect that you can't relate to younger species. You can't help them grow because you've forgotten what growth feels like. You've forgotten what it's like to struggle with difficult questions. You've forgotten what it's like to be wrong and learn from it. She spread her hands. Humanity remembers. We're wrong all the time. We make mistakes constantly. But we learn. We adapt, we change. And maybe, just maybe, we can help you remember how to do that too. The chamber exploded into debate, aliens arguing with each other. Some defending their achievements. Others looking uncertain. The High Arbiter had to call for order 3 times before the noise died down. Commander Park leaned over to Kovac. Either you just made the best speech in human history, he whispered, or you just ended our chances forever. Kovac sat down. Her legs were shaking. Her heart was pounding. She had said everything she needed to say. Now it was up to the Council. The High Arbiter stood. This session is ended. The Council will deliberate. Ambassador Kovac, you and your team will return to your vessel. We will call you when we have reached a decision. As they walked out of the chamber, Kovac could hear the aliens still arguing behind them. That at least was something. She had made them think. She had made them question. The human delegation sat in their small ship waiting. 3 hours had passed since they left the council chamber. 3 hours of silence and worry. Commander Park paced back and forth across the narrow cabin. Dr. Chen sat at a console, pretending to read reports but not really seeing them. Ambassador Liu stared out the viewport at the massive council station, and Kovac sat very still, replaying her speech in her mind, wondering if she had said too much or not enough. We should hear something soon, Liu said quietly. She was the oldest of them, with decades of diplomatic experience, but even she looked uncertain. They can't deliberate forever. They've been making decisions for millions of years, Park said. 3 hours is probably like 3 seconds to them. That's not how it works, Dr. Chen muttered. They experience time the same way we do. Well, most of them. The Velthram might be different, but I know, Park interrupted. I was just saying, both of you quiet, Liu said. Not unkindly, but firmly. We wait. That's all we can do. Kovac appreciated the silence that followed. She needed to think. Had she been too harsh? She had essentially told the council that they had all made terrible choices to achieve their greatness. She had questioned their most fundamental achievements. No wonder they were taking so long to respond. But she had also spoken the truth. At least the truth as she saw it. And if humanity couldn't join the council by being honest about who they were, then maybe they didn't belong there anyway. The communication console suddenly beeped. All 4 humans jumped. Liu moved to answer it, but Kovac was faster. She pressed the button, and the High Arbiter's face appeared on the screen. Or what passed for a face. The silver mantis-like being was as unreadable as ever. Ambassador Kovac, the Arbiter said, the council requests your presence again. Come alone. The screen went dark before Kovac could respond. She looked at her team. Park looked worried. Chen looked scared. Liu looked thoughtful. Alone is either very good or very bad, Liu said. They either want to speak to you privately, or they want to make an example of you without witnesses. That's comforting, Kovac said dryly. She stood up and straightened her uniform. If I'm not back in an hour, assume it went badly and contact Earth. And tell them what? Park asked. That we insulted the entire Galactic Council and now they're probably going to ban humanity from space forever? Something like that, Kovac said. She tried to smile, but it didn't quite work. The walk back to the council chamber felt longer than before. The corridors of the station were empty. Kovac's footsteps echoed on the metal floor. She wondered if other species were watching her through hidden sensors, waiting to see what happened to the human who had dared to challenge them. The chamber doors opened silently. Kovac stepped inside and stopped. The massive room was empty except for one figure. The High Arbiter stood at the center, exactly where Kovac had given her speech. Come, the Arbiter said. Kovac walked forward. Her heart was pounding again. She stopped a few feet from the Arbiter and waited. Your speech caused quite a disturbance, the Arbiter said. The Council has been in continuous debate since you left. Some species are angry. Some are thoughtful. A few are questioning everything they thought they knew. Kovac wasn't sure if that was good or bad. She said nothing. The Arbiter walked in a slow circle around her. The Zakri are furious. They say you insulted their empire's greatest achievement. They want you banned from Council space permanently. Kovac's heart sank. The Velthram are disturbed, the Arbiter continued. Your questions about those they left behind have caused division among them. For the first time in millennia, Velthram are disagreeing with each other about whether their transcendence was worth the cost. The Arbiter stopped in front of her. The Arinthi are experiencing something they have not felt in thousands of years. Doubt. Some of them are wondering if they gave up too much for harmony. They are wondering what they lost, Kovac found her voice. I didn't mean to cause problems. You spoke truth, the Arbiter interrupted. Uncomfortable truth, but truth nonetheless. And truth has consequences. The Arbiter turned away and looked up at the empty seats floating in the darkness above them. I am Kelnari. My species is one of the oldest in the galaxy. We have seen countless civilizations rise and fall. We have watched species like humanity emerge from their home worlds, full of hope and ambition. Most fail. They destroy themselves or fade into obscurity. The rare few that survive usually become like us. Old, careful, conservative. The Arbiter looked back at Kovac. We founded this council 3 million years ago. We created it to bring order to the galaxy, to prevent chaos, to preserve peace. And we succeeded. There has not been a major galactic war in over 2 million years. That's impressive, Kovac said carefully. Is it? The Arbiter asked. Or have we simply created a galaxy of stagnation? You said every council species has stopped evolving. You were correct. We have not changed in millions of years. We have not grown. We have not adapted. We have achieved our perfection, and in doing so, we have become static. The Arbiter moved closer to Kovac. She forced herself not to step back. Your species is young, reckless, violent. Everything about you screams that you are not ready for the galaxy. And yet you have something we have lost. You have the ability to change. You have the courage to look at your own mistakes and admit them. You have the strength to stop doing evil things even when it is easier to continue. Kovac felt a small spark of hope. Does that mean the council is divided, the Arbiter said. Almost evenly. Some species want to reject your application, some want to accept it, and some, like the Velthram, are too busy arguing among themselves to vote at all. The spark faded. So we're rejected? Not exactly, the Arbiter said. I have a proposal. A compromise. But I need to know something first. The Arbiter's triangular head tilted. Why did you really give that speech? You could have talked about human art or music or literature. You could have impressed us with your technology or your potential. Instead, you chose to make us uncomfortable. Why? Kovac thought about that. Because impressing you wouldn't have mattered. You've seen millions of civilizations. You've heard every argument. Nothing I could say would be new to you. She took a breath. But making you uncomfortable. Making you think? That was the only way to show you what humanity really is. We're not impressive because of what we've built. We're impressive because of what we've overcome. And sometimes, to show someone how to overcome something, you have to make them see what they're avoiding. The Arbiter made a sound that might have been laughter. It was hard to tell. You intentionally provoked the council. You gambled that making us angry would be better than making us bored. Yes, Kovach admitted. It was a dangerous gamble, the Arbiter said, but it worked. At least partially. The Arbiter gestured, and a holographic display appeared in the air between them. It showed a complex chart with species names and vote counts. This is the current state of the vote. As you can see, it is very close. Kovach studied the display. Some species were solidly against humanity. Others were solidly for them. But there was a large group in the middle who were marked as undecided. Those undecided votes will determine your fate, the Arbiter explained. And here is my proposal. I will give humanity provisional membership in the Council. You will have all the rights and privileges of membership, but with conditions. What conditions? First, humanity will be assigned a mentor species. The Thren have volunteered. They are a mammalian race somewhat similar to humans. They will guide you, help you avoid mistakes, and report on your progress. Kovach nodded. That seemed reasonable. Second, humanity will be required to present a progress report every 10 years. You will show the Council how you are growing, how you are solving your problems, how you are changing. We can do that, Kovach said. Third, the Arbiter said, and its voice became very serious. Humanity will establish a new Council committee, the Ethics and Evolution Committee. Its purpose will be to examine how all Council species achieved their current state, and whether those methods align with the Council's stated values of peace and cooperation. Kovach stared at the Arbiter. You want humanity to investigate the entire Council? Not investigate, the Arbiter corrected. Examine, question, challenge. You said we have stopped evolving. You were right. We need someone to push us forward, to make us uncomfortable, to remind us that perfection is not the end of growth. The other species will hate this, Kovach said. Some will, the Arbiter agreed. Others will welcome it, and those who hate it most are probably those who need it most. The Arbiter's voice softened slightly. My species, the Kelnari, have forgotten what it means to question ourselves. We have forgotten what it means to doubt. Your speech reminded us. It was not a comfortable reminder, but it was necessary. Kovach felt overwhelmed. This was so much more than she had hoped for. But it was also a huge responsibility. What if we fail? What if we can't live up to these conditions? Then you will be removed from the Council, the Arbiter said simply. But I do not think you will fail. Failure requires giving up. And from what I have seen, humans do not give up easily. The Arbiter extended one of its blade-like arms. Kovach realized it was offering something like a handshake. She reached out and carefully touched the alien's arm with her hand. 3 months later, Kovach stood in the same council chamber. But everything felt different now. The seats were full again. Thousands of aliens watching, but the mockery was gone. Some still looked at humanity with skepticism. Others watched with what might have been curiosity. A few, like the Thren representatives, looked almost friendly. The first official meeting of the Ethics and Evolution Committee was about to begin. Kovach had been appointed as the human representative, though she had help from Dr. Chen and a team of historians and philosophers back on Earth. 10 other species had volunteered to join the committee. The Thren were there, of course, but so were representatives from the Methran, the Korthi, and several species Kovach was still learning about. The High Arbiter called the meeting to order. This committee exists to examine the history and methods of all Council species. Its goal is not to judge, but to understand, to learn, to question. Ambassador Kovach will lead the first session. Kovach stood. She still felt nervous speaking in front of so many ancient beings, but she was getting used to it. Thank you, High Arbiter. Today we will begin with open testimony. Any species that wishes to share their history, their methods, or their concerns may do so. For a moment, no one moved. Kovach wondered if this whole thing would fail before it started. Then a figure rose from one of the floating seats. It was a Thren, the mammalian species that had volunteered to be humanity's mentor. The Thren floated down to the speaking area. It looked somewhat like a large otter standing upright, with golden fur and intelligent dark eyes. My name is Kalith, the Thren said. I speak for my people, though what I say may shame us. The chamber went silent. This was unprecedented. Species did not admit shame in front of the Council. Kalith continued. The Thren achieved unity 500,000 years ago. Before that, we had many nations, many cultures, many languages. There was conflict, yes, wars, disagreements, but there was also art, diversity, different ways of thinking. The Thren's voice grew softer. We decided this diversity was the cause of our conflicts. So we standardized. We created one government, one language, one culture. We called it efficiency. Kalith looked at Kovac. But after hearing Ambassador Kovac's speech, I began to research our history more deeply. I found records that had been archived and forgotten. Records of the cultures we erased, the languages we lost, the ways of thinking we eliminated. The Thren's voice broke slightly. We did not force anyone. We did not kill anyone. We simply made being different so difficult that everyone eventually conformed. Within 10,000 years, all Thren were the same. And we told ourselves it was progress. The chamber was absolutely silent. Some aliens looked uncomfortable. Others looked shocked. A few looked angry. I do not know if what we did was wrong, Kalith said, but I know we never questioned it. We never asked what we lost. We never wondered if there might have been another way. And that, I think, was the true mistake. Not the choice we made, but the fact that we stopped considering if it was the right choice. Kalith returned to their seat. For a long moment, no one else moved. Then another figure rose. Then another. One by one, species began to come forward. Not all of them. The Zachary stayed silent, as did several others. But enough came forward to fill ours. A Methrin representative admitted that their artificial intelligence had originally been designed by Methrin, who loved creating and building. But those Methrin had been declared obsolete once the AI was complete. They had died out because society had no place for them anymore. A Korthi representative revealed that their cloning technology had eliminated genetic diversity. Every Korthi was now a clone of a clone of a clone, going back thousands of years. They had perfect bodies that never aged, but they had lost the ability to adapt to new diseases or changing environments. A Zelf representative, its body more machine than organic, spoke of those who had refused to merge with technology. They had been labeled primitives and left behind as the rest of the species advanced. No one knew what happened to them. Story after story, species after species, each one revealing something they had given up, something they had lost, something they had never questioned until now. Not everyone participated. The Zachary remained silent and angry. The Velthram, still divided among themselves, did not speak. A few other species simply left the chamber, refusing to be part of what they called a waste of time. But enough stayed. Enough spoke. Enough questioned. When the session finally ended, Kovac felt exhausted. She had not expected this. She had thought maybe a few species would open up, but not this many, not this honestly. The High Arbiter approached her as the chamber emptied. You have accomplished something remarkable, Ambassador. You have made species who have not questioned themselves in millennia begin to doubt. I am not certain if I should thank you or blame you for the chaos this will cause. I'm not sure either, Kovac admitted, but I think questioning is better than certainty, even if it's uncomfortable. Especially because it is uncomfortable, the Arbiter corrected. Comfort is the enemy of growth. The Arbiter paused. There is something you should know. Several species are considering leaving the Council. They say this new focus on ethics and self-examination is not what they joined for. Kovac felt her stomach drop. How many? 3 so far. Perhaps more. The Zachary are definitely leaving. They have already begun preparations. I'm sorry, Kovac said. I didn't mean to break up the Council. Do not apologize, the Arbiter said firmly. A council that cannot handle questions is not a council worth having. If species leave because they refuse to examine themselves, then perhaps they should leave. Better a small council of species willing to grow than a large council of species frozen in time. The Arbiter looked at the empty chamber. Besides, for every species that leaves, others are becoming more interested in joining. Younger species that are still figuring themselves out. They hear about what humanity said and they see hope. They see that they do not need to be perfect to join. They only need to be trying. That made Kovac feel a little better. What happens now? Now humanity proves itself, the Arbiter said. You have 10 years until your first progress report. Show us that you can continue to grow. Show us that you can overcome your problems without sacrificing what makes you human. Show us that your way works. And if we can't, then we will have learned something valuable anyway, the Arbiter said. That is what science is, yes? Testing hypotheses. If humanity succeeds, wonderful. If humanity fails, then at least we will understand the limits of your approach. Either way, knowledge is gained. Kovach wasn't sure if that was comforting or terrifying. Probably both. Over the next few weeks, the committee continued to meet. The conversations grew deeper and more difficult. Some species began to make changes. The Thren started a cultural revival project, trying to recover some of the languages and traditions they had lost. The Methran began training new generations in building and creating, even though the AI could do it better. The Korti started a genetic diversity program, introducing small variations into their cloning process. Not everyone changed. The Zakri left the council as promised. 2 other species followed. But 5 new species applied for membership, inspired by humanity's example. Young species still struggling with their own problems but willing to work on them openly. Back on Earth, the news spread quickly. Humanity was part of the Galactic Council. Provisional membership, yes, but still. The reaction was mixed. Some people celebrated, others worried about the responsibility. Many questioned whether humanity was really ready. Kovach gave hundreds of interviews. She told the story over and over. The mockery, the challenge, the speech, the reaction, and every time she emphasized the same point. We didn't get accepted because we're perfect, she would say. We got accepted because we admitted we're not perfect and we're trying to be better. That's the standard humanity has to meet. Not perfection, just progress. It became a slogan of sorts. Not perfection, just progress. It appeared on posters and shirts. It became a rallying cry for people working on climate change, social justice, education, healthcare. Every problem humanity faced, not everyone liked it. Some people said it was setting the bar too low. Others said it was arrogant to think humanity had anything to teach ancient alien species. There were protests and debates and arguments, but that, Kovach thought, was very human. They would argue about this. They would debate it. They would question it. And maybe eventually they would figure it out. Or maybe they wouldn't. Maybe they would fail, but at least they would try. 10 years seemed like a long time, but Kovach knew it would pass quickly. Humanity had so much work to do. Climate change was still a threat. Inequality still existed. Conflict still erupted. All the problems that had always plagued humanity were still there. But now the world was watching. Not just Earth, but the entire galaxy. Hundreds of species would be paying attention to see if humanity could actually do what they claimed. If they could grow without sacrificing diversity. If they could progress without cutting away the parts that caused problems. It was pressure. Enormous pressure. But Kovach thought maybe humanity needed that pressure. Maybe having the galaxy watching would help motivate people to actually solve their problems, instead of just arguing about them.